To me, this is the most simplistic topic in the entire world. To me, it seems so absolutely simple, which terrifies me because usually when I think things are very simple, other people don't think they're simple. And so how much experience do we all have with things like law of attraction, manifesting your own reality, energy, frequency, vibration? These are all terms that go into what we're doing, and I really think that one of the main things is understanding the difference between those. When we talk about energy, frequency, vibration, I think a lot of times those words just get lumped together, and I think a lot of people don't really understand the difference behind them. So that's one of the things we're going to break through today. And as I was saying, a lot of this I'm going to use the terminology that I would normally use in it. If any of the terminology that I use throws you off in any way, just flag me down. Be like, I don't understand that. What do you mean by this? Is this the same thing as? I want us to feel like we can have a very open conversation in any way that we need to. Little bit of brief history in all of it. I'm a practicing shaman. Oh, it's Dawn. It's those two. Oh, it's them. One of the things that I want you to understand is that this very space that we're sitting in, this entire wellness center, in fact, most of my career has been built on the idea of energetic manifesting. The story of this space that we're in right now, when I made the comment about we have these chairs to be thankful for when we bought out the church, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, sometime around then, I decided I was going to start a church. The main reason for that was certain things that I didn't agree with politically. People were saying that they were going to do based on religious freedom, so I decided I was going to start a church, give myself some religious freedoms, and then we do things my way. Well, it turns out that that wasn't in the best interest of everything we were doing, but we had put a huge amount of energy and intention and focus and vibration and frequency and all the stuff we're going to talk about today into the idea of Shane now has a church. Then the landlord called and said, do you want to take the church space downstairs? They're moving out. Why, yes, Grant. As a matter of fact, we've been trying to manifest a church. We will happily take the church space. So we got down there. This is actually the sanctuary of the church, and this is now our yoga room, and we call it the sanctuary, and we actually rent it out. Shameless plug for anybody who needs a room. Then, fast forward a little bit farther, and the guy comes to yoga one night and says, hey, I want to talk to you after class. Is that okay? And I said, sure. And I stayed after. I said, what's up? And he said, well, I have a spiritual seekers group, and we would like to use your room. I said, great. What do you call it? The Church of Consciousness. So now we have weekly church services in the sanctuary, in the former church, after having done all of this intention manifestation stuff about having a church. That, Jan's been around for the entire ride with all the stuff that I keep getting into, and I could take our entire 2 hours just telling you stories about things I've manifested. These gongs back behind me, I decided one day I wanted gongs. By 4:30 that afternoon, somebody had bought one for me. I've owned 4 different Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Have never bought one in my life. Just pictured them, put the energy behind it. They come into my life. Don't have them anymore because people are idiots. Don't trust them. Love me, trust me. Don't trust them. But everything that's here, and so the reason I'm telling you that is it's sort of giving you my credentials. We are literally sitting in a space that has been formed by everything that we're going to talk about today. And I think there's nothing that helps make all of this real more than actually seeing it happen. Jan teases me a lot anytime I'll get stressed about money or whatever. She'll be like, why don't you pull a $100 bill out of the air? I've seen you do it over and over and over again. And so I want you to think about that. Even my husband, Scott, I did a lot of intention manifesting work and all of that, and then I met a feng shui person that told me that my relationship corner in my house was all wrong. I don't know why a dirty bird cage in a trash can is wrong, but it didn't manifest a good relationship. I put a mirror up, I put a ring, I put various things in that corner, and we met 2 weeks later. That was 22 years ago. And so I have practiced this my entire life. I've studied with a lot of different people. And one of the things that I always ask in any workshop like this, you have to be wonderful translators. If you hear me saying the word spell and that word freaks you out, then think prayer instead. They're actually the same thing. If I start talking about law of attraction and you call it the law of abundance or whatever, we have to get to interchangeable terms. And one of the things I'm very big on, because I have very, very well set beliefs inside of myself, and I'm that guy that no matter what the question is, you just check the box that says other. That's kind of where I land on everything. And getting to where we can have these interchangeable terms. I don't want to change anybody's religion. I don't want to change anybody's beliefs. I always ask people to expand them just a little bit, to allow it to get just a little bit bigger, to realize that whatever religion that you're living in, there's a door in the back of it that opens up to a warehouse of all the other ones. And we get to where we can see these things as interchangeable terms and we're all talking about the same thing. It normalizes it. And what I want you to understand when it comes to manifesting is it's the most normal thing in the world. Whatever you're experiencing in your life right now, you done manifested it. Once you buy a life, it's yours to keep. And you got to get to the point where you're doing it consciously instead of subconsciously. And most of us are manifesting our reality from our traumas. Most of us are manifesting our reality from our hurts, our limitations, what didn't work. I see everybody here going, yes. You know, one of the things that I hate the most is I've been focusing a lot on trauma response with clients and stuff lately. And when you throw out something like, we all move from our trauma, and half the room starts going like this because we all understand trauma, if we can take this down, and I'm not taking away from anybody's experience because I think trauma is a real thing, I think we carry it around with us a lot. The problem is, acknowledging your trauma, nothing wrong with it. Owning that as your identity is the biggest roadblock you will ever have. One of the ones that I still wrestle with, that you can see how it's beginning to change, I grew up pretty poor, and so I never thought about doing big things. I never thought big things were available to me. I always thought that getting a minimum wage job and just making it by and doing without and cutting corners and whatever, I always thought that that was the way you get by, and I still run into it today. This is a 4,500 square foot facility with 7 different renters and 5 yoga teachers and all of this sort of stuff, and I still get stuck in the idea of abundance consciousness because of the trauma impact that we talk about. A lot of teasing in school, a lot of things that I saw other people get to do that I didn't get to do, and I still have to overcome that when it comes to manifesting things. And I think that that's a simple one we can all understand, but it could be any number of things. I used the example last night in yoga. Has anybody ever been the last one picked for volleyball? Has anybody ever been the last one invited to the party? Has anybody ever watched everybody else go out and do something and not been invited along? And when somebody's had physical assault or sexual trauma or something like that, they don't want to look at something like not being invited to the party as trauma. It is. It's little trauma. The other stuff might be big trauma, but the day that we get into comparing and keeping notes of who's winning the trauma game, we're all losing. And so we want to get to the idea that we acknowledge those things, but we want to rise above them. And so when we're operating within that, we are emitting a certain vibration out into the universe because we are at the frequency that is trauma-based, and the energy that we're running through it is going to express in that traumatic form. That's why a lot of us get to the point where, wow, the thing that I've always, well, why did it fall apart at the last second? Oh, that's what it's actually, oh no, it didn't happen. That is one of the things that happens when we identify with lack or with trauma or with negativity, limitations. We're all really good at the list of why it won't work. And all we really need on the list is why we believe that it will. And I think that if we can simplify it that much, we're really going to be ahead of the game. So one of the first things we have to do is to understand our terminology. And so I think that when I say everything is energy, well, we all pretty much agree on that. Even science agrees with that. And anytime science and the shaman agrees, put that shit in the bank. It's great. Understanding the terminology. Energy is the thing that everything is made of. It's the power behind creation. In fact, if people ask me to define what I think God is, I think God is the creational force of the universe. I don't view God as a person. I don't think it's some pissed off dude on a cloud saying, you get good stuff and you don't. I don't buy that. I think it's the creative force of the universe that manifests itself in everything we experience, everything we see, everything we can conceive of, the stuff that we're not clever enough to conceive of, because there's a lot of stuff in this world, and this is just this world, universe, very, very big place. So energy is the fuel, if we could consider it the fuel that actually runs everything, and that's just a simple terminology I want you to get in your head. Then frequency is the specific intention or expectation that you're holding in regard to any situation or circumstance. And then vibration is the manifestation of what the energy becomes when expressed through a certain frequency. Let's go through that in a little bit different way. I told some of you that I used to be an on-air DJ, and I love it when I can bring like an old career into something that we're doing here. So if you look at what we're talking about, like a radio station tower, then the energy, in this case it'd be electricity, is running through at a certain frequency that is that station's channel. So if you're trying to tune into the country station, you go to this end of the dial. And if you're trying to go to the rock station, you go to this end of the dial. And what is the gentle giant of the Ozarks is somewhere in the middle. And is that even still around? I think I'm showing my age again. But when we think about that certain channel being the frequency, then what comes out of the tower is the vibration that's sent out into the world that manifests in this example as music in your receiver. In this way, you become the tower, align yourself with a certain frequency, you build the energy, you broadcast it out, and the receiver is the collective manifestation quality of the universe. So we want to think about the idea that all we're really doing is adjusting our dial to what we want our output to be. And we want to get to the point, I don't know if anybody listens to AM radio anymore, but if you ever had one of the old school AM radios, I'm going to make everybody show their age today, and you're dialing that thing and the music's there and just a little bit more in the back. That's what our trauma response is. That's what our negativity is. That's what our doubt, our disbelief, our whatever limitation that we're holding on to, whatever identity we're holding that doesn't complement what we're trying to do. That's the static. So we got to get the static out by dialing in that specific frequency of what we want. And when it comes to manifesting, one of the most important things that you're ever going to learn is to figure out what part matters. If how something comes to you matters, then you're trying to manifest the way that it shows up. I don't care how it shows up. I care that it shows up. I decide what I want, and I put it in the clearest, simplest terms possible, because I'm saying, hey you guys, however you can send it on over. Now, for some of us, the way something manifests is going to matter to us. Sometimes that's the bigger part. You know, I want to manifest validation. And then you talk to them, it's, I want to manifest validation from my boss at work because I feel underappreciated. Meanwhile, 75 other people in their life are validating them left and right, and they're not feeling it because it's the where it came from that mattered. It wasn't the validation itself. And so we got to decide what part matters the most, and that thing that we're trying to actually manifest, bring forth, however you want to word that, is going to be the specific frequency that we're trying to dial ourselves into. We're then going to run that energy through that frequency, and that becomes our vibration. And so one of the first things I wanted to do is to show you how easy it is to shift things. And one of the ways we're going to do that, I'm going to be using some sound stuff today, mainly because I like noise. You probably can't tell at all. But I like sound tools. That's why there's like 30 of them up here. The gong is one of my favorite tools that we use here. And the reason is that it is vibrating itself. That is a vibration that causes the sound. And so if we take the idea that the intention is to shift our state of consciousness, and the frequency is going to be the way that I hit that thing, Hit it fast, hit it slow, hit it in the middle, hit it in the side, hit it with this mallet, hit it with that mallet. Those are the different energies that I'm going to run through it. And then the actual sound that comes out is literally caused by vibrations, and therefore it's the embodiment of everything we're talking about. So everybody, if you need to set your clipboard down or whatever, or you can hold it in your lap, whatever works for you, why don't you just close your eyes for just a second? And just check in with yourself. Just see how you feel, where you're at right now, the experience you've had today, whatever it is, the expectation you had coming in here. And we're going to take just 2 or 3 minutes of this, but I want you to let yourself feel the vibration. I'm generating the energy. I'm creating the frequency. This is creating the vibration that comes from that frequency, and the expectation is that it's going to shift our awareness.
For our highest good.
For our highest good. Well, and you know, I grew up old school with this stuff. We always ended everything we said with this or something for the greater good of all. And so let's all think about, we're trying to raise our vibration, but we're going to talk about that part in a little bit, because so many people get hung up on raising their vibrations, and I meet a lot of people that need to ground. And some people would think that's lowering a vibration in a certain way. So we'll talk about all that in a minute. Close your eyes, settle in, thinking about what life has been, what the day has been, what our expectation for the day is, and then just let yourself have this experience for a moment. And it'll keep going for a little bit. You can go ahead and open up your eyes. So did you notice the part where it went ting, 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 ting? I grabbed a smaller mallet and went around the outer edge. The rest of it was a big mallet that was concentrated more in the center of it. And the harder you hit, the bigger the vibration that comes out of it. The more energy you put into it, the bigger the vibration is that comes out of it. And the frequency was what we talked about, the intention that we were setting of what we're trying to bring through in that regard. Now, that was a very short gong bath. We usually do that for half an hour, 45 minutes when we have a room full of people doing that. But in that brief moment, can we all agree that we feel just a little bit different on the other side of that than we did on the front end of it? It's that simple to shift your vibrational state. It's that simple to change the energy of the way things are. And so the energy, the fuel that we're putting behind it, matters just as much as anything else. Don't put diesel in a gas engine. You can tell who knows the reference there and who doesn't. You will lock your engine up. It will not run very well. The wrong size battery won't even fit. And so we've got to think about what fuel are we running through things. And so energy can be built through a lot of different means. And when we begin to realize that everything is energy, then we have to ask ourselves through a level of discernment, is this a complementary energy to what I'm trying to do? Or is this a detrimental energy to what it is that I'm trying to do? So we can build the energy through many different means. It's important to remember that everything we engage with either increases our energy or it lessens it. When we eat good food and we exercise, we gain energy. When we eat poorly, we become lazy, our energies go down. The same is true for our interactions with other people. Some people give us energy and some people just deplete the crap out of us. We should avoid them. This can be extended into our jobs, homes, friends, family, activities, much, much more. It's important to note that it isn't as simple as increasing or decreasing energy. That's what I was getting at just a second ago. We want to think about what type of energy it is that we're talking about, and does it match our goals? So I'm going to use chakras. Are we all familiar with chakras? At least just a little bit. We all know what chakras are, energy centers within the body, that sort of a thing. I have people come in all the time and they're like, I want you to charge up my chakras. And they'll sit there and be like, I want you to charge up my chakras because I really just want to have more energy and I feel like I want to accomplish stuff and I really need you to dial it up for me. And I'm like, oh dude, you got hyper chakra. We need to calm that shit down. Grounding, settling, mellow, take a deep breath, put a black rock in your pocket, sit, eat something, please. And we think all the time that increase is all there is. Well, what if somebody's trying to manifest a good night's sleep, spoken as an insomniac? I need an energy that is very mellow and grounding and takes me down and lets me let go of that hypercharged energy that I've tried to hold for the yoga class that day, the clients that day, the workshop that day, my 3 German shepherds, my husband. That takes a lot of energy. Getting to where you decide what it is. And a lot of people would say, well, that's a matter of frequency. Yes, it is. Because whatever energy you're receiving is coming from the frequency that the source is at. So if I've got a friend that lifts me up in an incredible degree, then their frequency is one of uplifting. Therefore, the energy that they run through that frequency of theirs is creating a vibration of uplifting. They're directing that vibration towards me. I become the receiver. They're the radio tower. I'm uplifted. Likewise, when we've got the people that bring that down energy in a negative sense, not the grounding one, the flat out negative one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look outside. Pay attention to society, talk to a random stranger. It will become, go on Facebook, read comments. You'll understand what I mean. I swear to God. That negative energy could be very intense or it could be very mellow. Like, wow, you look really good for someone of your age. Sounds like a nice compliment, but didn't that just take us all down a step? That's a very negative energy that's coming by, and it can come by with great exuberance. My God, you look so good compared to how you usually do. That could be high vibrational energy that's coming across. Very energetic that's there. Still punches you in the gut. That's not helping anything. So we want to get to the point where we're acknowledging the different vibrational patterns that we're receiving that is based on the frequency of what it's coming through. My mother, you'll hear me referencing my mother a lot in this because I reference her a lot in everything because she's probably the greatest spiritual teacher I've ever had in my life and would be my best friend even if she wasn't my mother. Score for her. She did something right along the way. I saw her after COVID. I'd not gone over for a month or two. She's a little bit older and when I went to see her, I was like, oh my God, you lost weight. You lost a lot of weight. What'd you do? This is how cool my mom is. She goes, Well, I got out of the shower one day and I weighed myself and I gained a pound. So I sat down on the edge of my bed and I said, now, Jean, are you really that stupid? And I decided I wasn't. I said, but how did you lose the weight? And she goes, I just told you, I decided I wasn't stupid. I know the difference between broccoli and chocolate cake. They're both foods, vibrating at very different frequencies. So they're offering something very, very different to your energy grid when you take them in. Now, we could all agree that there's a health factor of that, right? Sometimes I need me some chocolate cake. Sometimes that's the thing that's going to make me feel good. I know that too much of it is going to take me from feeling good into feeling very, very bad. Going to have that sugar crash, going to have those extra pounds I want to get rid of, going to have the guilt factor because I decided I wasn't going to have it. But sometimes giving ourselves a little treat is the thing that's there. So even the same exact thing can have a different vibrational impact on you depending upon where you are, what time it is, how you approach it, what's going on. Sometimes you're in a yoga studio, so you're going to hear a lot of yoga references too, which would be the first time that I'm going to say that I recognize 2 people in this room from yoga, so shame on the rest of you. Do some yoga, it's good for you. Raises the vibration, increases your capacity for channeling that vibration through you, that energy through you. So we want to think about the idea that whatever that source is it complementary to what we're doing? Is it not? I'll give you a really good example. One of my friends, Anne, is an attorney, and her brain works very differently than mine. And a lot of times I'll have a great idea of something and she'll point out, here's why that's not a great idea. A lot of people would think that that's detracting. A lot of people would think that the vibration coming from that is one of limitation. It's not if it keeps me out of trouble with the law. It's not if it keeps me moving forward. It's not if she actually gets me to have a contract with the new renter so we have ground rules and things like that. Sometimes things that appear as a limitation can actually be the greatest compliment to what you're trying to do in regards to anything. I've said for years that if you're trying to manifest a job, don't try to manifest a job as the CEO of Apple. That job's taken. You're just setting yourself up for failure. And so somebody going, you're not going to get that job. That is not a negative energy. That's a realistic energy. That's somebody helping you to understand, bless you, where you're actually coming from in that regard. So when we talk about food, I love this one. I had a friend that I went through my yoga teacher training with. She used to teach here. That would be our second reference to yoga. I'm reminding you right now, do yoga. She started a company called The Nude Foodie. And The Nude Foodie was about raw foods. I thought it was a clever name. I think it's catchy. It's good advertising. But her explanation of how to eat was the most brilliant thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. She said, if your life is feeling dull, eat something spicy. If you're feeling overly manic, eat something that grows out of the dirt, that's a root vegetable. If you're feeling very limited in your life, eat something that grows on a vine and spirals out and gets bigger and bigger as it goes. If you're needing something that uplifts you, eat something light. If you're needing something to ground you, eat something heavy. And I love it because in that 30-second explanation, you get the entire concept, don't you? And it will change your entire way of looking at food as energy. We always think of food as energy as the calorie content that we're going to be able to burn to create fuel within the body and the blah, 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 blah. That's not actually how that even works. It has a lot to do with the breath and the oxygen and all of that sort of stuff. But when we allow ourselves to look at those things of how can we complement, or sometimes how can we offset the energy that we're in. I'm diagnosed bipolar. Actually, I'm old enough that they call it manic depressive. And so I have dramatic mood swings. Very severe mood swings. And most of the time I can manage them, sometimes not. Usually good at managing them in front of a group, not so good at managing them in personal life. I think we all know that trick. no matter what our affliction may be. But if I'm feeling overly manic, I need to take in foods and be surrounded by things that dampen that energy. It's the reason that most people don't treat their bipolar quality, because nobody wants to get rid of their manic, because that feels good and everybody likes them when they're that guy. The depression stuff, I need something that lifts me up and takes me to a higher place. So let's think about this one. I love this example because, man, I bet everybody in here has been guilty of this at some time. I don't know how I managed to get to where I don't do this, but I hear it all the time. You have the breakup. The love of your life leaves you. What do? You're already down. What do? You grab the ice cream and put on the saddest movie in the history of humanity. I see the guilt on all your faces. I see it. You're just taking yourself farther down. You're already feeling like shit. Why aren't you putting on the comedy? Not a rom-com. A comedy, silly, slapstick, goofy stuff. I spend all day talking to people about their problems, right? That's my number one job. People do not call and pay my rates because everything's great. They want to talk about what's wrong. And after talking about big, heavy problems all day long, I go home and watch cartoons. I go home and put on the stupidest, most mindless stuff that you can imagine. My husband wants to watch some sort of deep movie that mimics reality, and oh, look at their struggle. I was like, I just talked to 3 people going through that. I don't want to watch that crap right now. I want something that's going to lift me up. And so sometimes we need to invest in whatever energy is going to be the counterpoint of what it is that we need. When we're feeling down and depressed, put on happy music. Dance around your house. Watch a stand-up comedian, even if it's not your thing. Find something, because if you're down and depressed, whatever your thing was, isn't working. We want to lift it up to that better place. Likewise, let's say that it's not just manic depression. Let's say that we're just feeling really wound up, keyed up about something, super excited about something. We're going to Disneyland. I'm so excited. We're going to Disneyland. Oh my God, we're leaving tomorrow for Disneyland. And I get down to Florida, or that one's in California, I guess. And I get to the point where I'm like, oh, well, I guess I was so wound up I forgot to pack my underwear. We've all done something like that at some point, and so we want to think about finding that middle ground of everything that's there. Another wonderful radio reference. In a studio microphone, there's a thing called a clipper limiter. And that clipper limiter cuts off the high, tinny parts of the voice. It cuts off the low, muddy parts of the voice. And all you get is those beautiful, sweet tones in the middle. Well, if we can take that and apply that to our life, and we get rid of those stupid, ridiculous, manic highs, and we get rid of those tragic, feeling, depressed lows, then we're still living. We have room for different emotions, but we're not doing this thing, and we're managing our energy. So just keeping your mood intact is a way of dialing in your frequency. And then taking whatever energy you're putting into it and running it through to express a specific vibration out into the world. So examples of other things that can match or not match what you're trying to accomplish. Anybody got any ideas? What are some contradictory things that we all know that we do? What are the things that we know isn't helping what's there? You know, if you've got the friend that always questions what you do and you're questioning yourself, I would avoid that person when you're trying to make a decision. When you've got the person that is always encouraging, you know, I'll reference my husband again, my biggest pet peeve with him, I'll have an idea about something I'm trying to do with my career or something we're going to do at the house, and I'll say, what do you think? He's like, you're just so good at all this stuff, whatever you decide will be great. That didn't help. That was no help at all. You know, like, how many of us in relationships? Oh, we got a lot of work to do in here. No, or just with a good friend. What do you want for supper? Whatever. Anything that sounds good to you. This is not a helpful energy to take in. This is not a helpful vibration for what we're trying to accomplish. And so we've got to figure out how to manage those things and get it to the best place ever. This is a total side note, but you'll realize I have a lot of side notes. Best thing I've ever heard on that one, and I am going to try this very soon. Look at the person that you want to go to dinner with and go, I thought of the most amazing place for us to go. I bet you can't guess what it is. And no matter what they say, they got it right. Oh my God, you guessed it! And now you didn't have to decide a thing. That would be me dialing in the frequency of manipulation, running the energy through that to the vibration of manipulation, and then they responded just the way I wanted to. That might be the most evil example I have, but it will also save a big argument in the end, which isn't so evil. When we think about those things to increase or decrease energy, let's say that we've got our good intention. Let's say that we're in a clear-headed mood. Let's say that we've dialed in what it is that we want. Then we've decided what our frequency is. We've got ourselves lined up with that. Here's what I genuinely want to happen. But this is just adding that fuel that we're talking about at this point. My list here. Ways to increase energy. Ritual, singing or chanting, dancing, being around people who lift up and empower you, healthy eating, exercise, getting out in nature, breath work. Well, look, it says yoga. I don't know how that got there. What are some other things that come to mind? What is it that isn't on that list that actually gives you more energy? Anybody? What pumps us up in that regard? Hobby, yeah, absolutely. Something that you enjoy doing, something that actually gives you a sense of satisfaction, feedback. You want to see why that's such a great answer for her? She made that lotus up there. Pretty cool, huh? Isn't that awesome? Now tell them what it's made of.
It's made out of plastic grocery bags.
No way. Do you sell those?
I could.
If you all turn around, you see that white bag back there? She made that as well, out of the same type of material. Doesn't look like plastic, does it? Right? So the idea, and I love this because she's like, a hobby. Weren't all of you just lifted up a little bit and got a little energetic bump when I explained that that was one of them? Like all of us are like, really? There's this whole vibe that begins to go around the room. And so when we step into something we love and we increase our energy, it can become very infectious. We can pass it on to other people. Time for another mom story. 13 years ago, she was going through stage 4 lymphoma cancer that I had diagnosed in a reading with her. Mom, I see cancer in your blood. We've got to get you to the doctor. Stage 4 lymphoma. On the scale of 1 to oh shit, this is all the way to that end of the spectrum. So I was her number one support person. I took her to every chemo treatment. I set her up every evening afterwards, made sure she got fed, all that good stuff. And so one day we're at her chemo treatment, and there's this woman who's sitting across the way. I don't know why I always include this part, because it sounds terrible when I say it, but it was the thought I had. I decided for some reason the woman must have been Hungarian, just because of the way that she talked about it. She just came across that way. I don't even know if people from Hungary talk that way. How would I know? And she is ranting. There's a person sitting beside her that you could tell is clearly the person who had brought her to her treatment. And she is going off giving them bloody hell about, nobody supports me, nobody comes with me to these treatments, nobody cares that I'm going, and you can see this person just shrinking like, what am I? And finally, she's getting loud. And the guy looks at her and goes, they can all hear you, right? And she points to the people behind the little glass thing, goes, they're in a bubble, they can't hear me, and just starts back in with the berating bitch session. If you've ever taken somebody through chemo, you realize that you show up, you go into a waiting room, and then you go into another waiting room, and then you go to another waiting room, and then you finally get to the treatment room. So in one of these middle waiting rooms, we all sit down. And a different person starts, can you believe that woman out there? She was doing nothing but bitching and complaining, just making everybody's day miserable. Can you believe that she would act like that and take away everybody's trying to... My mom, in about this tone of voice, you ever want to get somebody yelling to stop? Talk like this. And she goes, she's probably struggling just like the rest of us. She's probably doing the best that she can, and are we really any better if we're just going to complain about her? And then this big loving smile. Another person goes, oh my God, you're right, and smiles back at her. And in 2 minutes' time, the entire room was laughing. One person had infected, I think is a good word, shifted the vibration of everybody's experience because of the energy that they were pouring into it and the frequency that they were operating out of. My mother comes in with a different frequency, runs a very subtle energy, not nearly as intense as that one. Different energy coming through her frequency and shifted the vibration of the entire room. If you ever think that you don't have an impact on other people, you're wrong. If you've ever thought that you can't make a difference, you're wrong. I guarantee you, you make a difference to every single person that you encounter. Well, what if they are the exact same thing when I left? Then you had no impact on them, which is having an impact. You didn't enrich their life, you didn't lift them up, you didn't do anything. That's an impact. Because nothing is worse than a hollow experience with somebody that has no juice to it. Nobody wants a flat line when they interact with somebody. We want something out of it, or why bother? I'm the only person I know who says that every relationship in the world is based on use. I use you for what I get out of it, you use me for what I get out of it. I'm the guy that'll say it very bluntly, and most people just recoil at this one. Right now, you're using me for the information I have on this subject, and I'm using you for the money that you paid me to do that. That's not a bad statement. There's nothing wrong in what I just said. That was a clear and accurate representation of the exchange that we have going on here, and yet many people would take that as a negativity, and therefore their vibration, their frequency that they're at and mine are incongruent. And so we got to find a way to get on the same page if we're going to actually have a connection. That's why one of the most important things you can do, best friend, total stranger, don't care. What's your mood like today? How are you doing? I'm one of those people, Jan's known me a very long time, and I guarantee you she'll back me up on this. I won't ask you how you're doing unless I want to know. Hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Okay, piss off. You don't care how I am. I'm not fine. We're all making this up. It's what I refer to as the acceptable level of bullshit that keeps society going. Is that how we want to live? I want to live authentically. If I look at you and I go, how are you? I want you to tell me the truth. Don't ever ask me how I am. I will pull out a PowerPoint presentation to explain it in detail. Well, I'm having a crap day, and here's why. Or, I'm feeling great, and here's why. And you're like, 20 minutes later, you're like, fine would have done, dude. I would have been fine with fine. No, you wouldn't have. Because that would have been inauthentic. All of these are energy exchanges, and we got to make sure that we're getting the ones that are lifting us up and taking us more towards what it is that we want to do. We talked about hobbies. What's another thing that really shifts us? Music. Music is a great one. I have a small example, and I will apologize ahead of time because I'm going to make you all listen to me sing for a second. In yoga, we have these things called mantras, and it's used in meditation as well, but there's a form of it that's called kirtan, where you actually sing it out loud. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Shiva Om Namah. We all get the vibe on that? Same words. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Two very, very different vibes coming out because I set the frequency that I ran that energy through at a different place. One's really good for cleaning the house, the other one isn't. One's really good for grounding and settling in for meditation, the other one's going to keep you far more engaged. They were the exact same mantra, delivered through the exact same apparatus, but set at a different frequency to emit a different vibration when it comes out. And when we begin looking at everything that way, then it all just begins to make sense. You actually get to where you can view the entire world in that capacity. And so I wanted us all to sort of build up some energy together. We're going to do another mantra. This one is interestingly going to go along with what you said at the very beginning. This one is Sata Nama. Sata Nama. See, the people who do yoga are nodding their head. Yes, we know that's what it is. Oh, y'all think I'm going to stop? Never. No, we got another hour and 14 minutes of this stuff going. I'm going to get to the drum, and this is purely for the sake of understanding building up energy. Satanama translates into true self. Our true self is our soul self, which is the highest vibration that we can possibly bring through. If we want to live our best life, as the phrase goes, we figure out what our dharma is, which means how the soul wants to express itself through our physical form. So, Satanama. There's a mudra that goes with it. We go, Satanama, Satanama. You can do that part, or you can not do that part. In fact, you can sing along with me, or you cannot sing along with me. Everything's a choice. But choosing not to is setting one specific frequency that's going to generate a certain vibration that's coming out of you, and jumping in and participating fully is going to be a different frequency. It's bringing through a different vibration at the end of it. And this is all just about building up the fuel. This is just building up the energy for whatever it is that we want. And so this one I would use if I was trying to be clear within myself about what I want. I'm not sure which job I want. I'm not sure which car I want to buy. I'm not sure if I want to enter this relationship or not. Satanama, my true self. What is going to match that? And so to show the power of bringing these things through, there's a powwow drum. I'm going to be, usually you'd have different people on every stick. I'm going to be everybody. And so we're going to start in with, Mary's just like, as always. Yeah, they've met me. We want to think about the idea of we're trying to not only set our frequency at expressing our higher self. That's what the Satanama is. That's our mantra. That's our phrase. That is our thing that is very clearly defining what it is that's there. And then the drum is going to be building that energy up while we're doing it. So we're taking our frequency, we're running the energy through it, and we're shifting our vibration by doing so. So jump in if you want to. Don't jump in if you don't want to. And so this would be Satanama, 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 Satanama. Nice ending. You usually get somebody that just goes on. I'm like, when we are doing something like that, and it gives us something that we can get into, like, singing along with your favorite song. When we're doing something like that, and trust me, singing about your highest self, the fact that you're actually a soul having a human experience, that should be your favorite song. Just like, side note, if you ever have to spend time by yourself, alone, the only thought in your head is that you're spending time with your favorite person in the entire world. And if you don't think that, then your frequency needs adjusted. Because the energy you're running through that is one of lack, and you should never view yourself as lacking. You should never view yourself as not enough. I never feel like I'm alone. I get to spend time with my absolute favorite person. Everybody's like, oh, a little bit of narcissism there. Maybe, but in the healthiest way possible. I've always said that they need to come up with a term that means narcissist that cares. Oh, they do. It's called egotist. Oh, I got it. I knew I could get there. On this idea of our frequency that we're talking about, Tapping into certain frequencies can be done in many different ways. I know I'm going back and forth with the terms, but it all goes together so much. Many different ways. It's a matter of becoming the embodiment of what you're trying to manifest. You have to become the vessel that is attuned to the frequency you want, and the energy you run through that frequency aligns with your desires. One of the greatest things that you will ever do in this is one of my favorite things to tell people in manifesting. So we've all probably heard the phrase that thoughts create reality, right? Wrong. Emotions create reality. Thoughts are this big. Emotions are this big. People always want to challenge me on this one. Here's a simple test. Next time you're overly emotional, see if your emotions or your thoughts rule what happens next. See which one creates your reality. When somebody pisses you off and you've decided to be a kind and loving soul, does that thought win or does the pissed off win? When somebody hurts your feelings, I know I'm good enough. Do you feel good enough in that moment? Our emotions dictate what happens to a giant, giant degree. This is one of the coolest things we can learn. Because when we're trying to manifest things, we get to do this thing that I call borrowing an emotion. Borrowing an emotion is one of the strongest ways to shift your frequency. You simply think of a time when something similar to what you want to manifest occurred and step into that emotional space, and then you tie it to your expectation. Let's say that you want a new car. I don't care if you have to go back to when you were a kid and you got your Barbie dream car that you were so happy about and you felt amazing, or you got your bicycle that you thought was so cool, or you got your driver's license for the first time and you didn't need mom to take you anywhere. Whatever it was, that's a certain emotional feeling. And most of us can pull those things up. If you cannot pull up a positive, happy emotion, first of all, check yourself, because you're remembering things through a very negative lens. I have to interject this one. It's one of my favorites. Most people talk about rose-colored glasses being a dangerous thing. You know, you see everything is better than it is. You know what's worse? Shit-colored glasses, where everything you see is shitty, no matter how good it actually is. And if you can't pull up a positive, happy emotion, then you're not remembering things correctly. Walk outside at sunrise and tell me there's nothing good in the world. Listen to a bird sing. Tell me there's nothing good. Get a hug from somebody. Tell me you don't have any happy emotions that are there. You're lying to yourself. I'm not taking away from your trauma. I'm not saying you didn't have bad stuff. I got a list of them. But where are we placing our focus? Because attention, or the energy flows where the focus goes. Isn't that the saying? Abraham Hicks, I think that's the one that came from. Getting to the point where we think back to what it is that we want. Some toys, some accomplishment, your first crush. You know, that first time that you're ever like, oh, I think I feel something for this person. That's a giant emotion. And usually we're too dumb to know any better, so that one just stays like, oh my God. And we want to allow ourselves to be able to tap into those things at any particular point, and then we tie it into what it is that we wanted to happen. This facility, I had the great blessing of coming up with a place called Hilltop. When I was 12 years old, my mom took me to Hilltop for the first time. Hilltop was Betty's house. She lived at the top of the hill, so they called it Hilltop. Her son lived at the bottom of the hill. We called it Hill Bottom. Betty was a dear, sweet soul. I met her when I was 12, but I always like to give this reference point. She was my best friend. At the time I'm referencing, our birthday was in the same week. I was 23, she was 69. She was my best friend. And she opened her house up for over 40 years to teach metaphysics and energetics to people, to teach spirituality to people. So every Wednesday night, instead of going to church, we went to Hilltop. And out at Hilltop, I met psychics and astrologers and healers and witches. And because this was long enough ago, chiropractors, because they were so far out there at the time. Oh, they were. You know, like they would come and it was like, what do you do? Chiropractic? weirdo. You know, I'm going to go talk to the witch. And meeting all these different people that would share their experience and teach me stuff and show me stuff. That's where I learned essential oils, that's where I learned crystals, that's where I learned herbs, that's where I learned channeling, that's where I learned tarot, that's where I learned so much stuff. That's where I met Barb, known as Spirit Woman, who was the medicine woman who taught me to be a shaman. All that stuff came from there. And my entire life, I said that I was going to have a place where people could come and get what I got from Hilltop. Welcome. And that's what it's all about. It's taking that thing. And I held that emotion, what Hilltop meant to me. And anytime somebody walks out of this place saying, I learned something, I feel better, you gave me a tool I can use, whatever, I know that I borrowed the right emotion because I see it showing up in them. And I know that borrowing that emotion is what has manifested this entire place. Jan is she's the right-hand Jan. Some people have a right-hand Jan. She knows the struggle we've had with this place through the years. You may not have ever noticed this, but we're in Springfield, Missouri. There's a church on every corner, and me. Now in a church. What do you guys got to say? And you realize how much what we believe is not supported, not encouraged, how much negativity is there. You know, one of the biggest churches in the area, one of the biggest churches anywhere, a couple of years ago, and said that if you do yoga, you're going to be possessed by a demon, and actually said close down all the yoga studios. Do any of you know the rest of that story? I've told it before. Every other studio in town was like, oh, how can that mean old pastor say that? You know what I did? I rented the billboard that happened to be on their parking lot, and for an entire month it said, on behalf of yogis everywhere, Sage Studio wishes you love and peace this holiday season. They're reading love and peace from the yogis, going in and hearing the yogis were evil. You make up your mind. I decided that my frequency wasn't one of being hurt or defeated. I decided my frequency was to stand my own ground and decide that we were just as powerful and had just as much energy as they did. We ran the energy in the form of good, hard cash into this situation, and the vibration over that entire parking lot for a month. And every word was chosen very carefully. I don't have a problem saying Merry Christmas, but you think I was going to put that on that sign? Happy Holidays. It was the most lit up, beautiful, pretty middle finger you have ever seen in your entire life. And it carried the energy and the vibration that I wanted it to. It impacted just what it did. And yeah, it's a funny, silly story and all of that, but at the moment, it wasn't silly. This is somebody telling a congregation of 9,000 people to shut down every yoga studio in town, and every other studio in town was having a meltdown over it.
And some did shut down.
And some did shut down. Keep in mind, this is while they had a stretch class in the church gymnasium that they wanted people to pay a membership for instead. So this also means that getting rid of negative emotions and thoughts that get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish is vitally important. Most people do not experience the life that they want because they have the emotions that come from blocks that are not aligned with what it is they're wanting. Doubt, lack of self-worth, whatever negativity is there. You've got to allow yourself to do addition by subtraction. You've got to get rid of those negative emotions and those limiting thoughts. And I guarantee you that whatever it is you take up, meditation, martial arts, yoga, whatever it may happen to be, I think that we've got to invest in our own self, because until we invest in ourselves, we're never going to feel like we're enough. And we can sit there and say to ourselves, yeah, I believe in myself. No, you don't. If you're having to say it, you're not there. If you're having to try to convince yourself, not really living it. Getting to the point where you can actually be that way out loud. I referred to myself as an egotist earlier. It's not actually true. I'm actually a fairly humble person. I'm just confident in who I am. I know who I am, and I don't invest in those negative energies. It's one of my favorite little rants to go off on. People will say to me often, wow, you're full of yourself, aren't you? Yes. Yes, I am. I got rid of everybody else's judgments and expectations and opinions. It's just me in here. I am full of myself. And you should be full of yourself, and you should be full of yourself, and you should allow everybody else to be full of themselves, because only when you are full with yourself, because let's say it the other way, if you're not full of yourself, then you're full of somebody else. Ew. Well, I know it's the big spiritual language that you all come for. It helps a lot. Getting to the point where you're removing the idea of not good enough. And this is where I have all of my little mental tricks that I like to use. I like to play the whose shit is it game. When I go through a negative emotion, my first thought is that even mine? Do I genuinely feel that way about myself? Or did somebody else put that in me? Did society put that thought in me? Did TV put that thought in? Did that church put that thought in me? Because trust me, the churches do a lot of those. I'm not anti-church, I'm just anti-bad church. We're sitting in one. How could I be against them? You want to find out where that thought or emotion comes from. And if it's not yours, return to sender. I'm sorry, that occupant doesn't live here. You can have that back. Bless you. If it's yours, go to work on shifting it. Change it. Do whatever it is you need to get that out of you. Allow yourself to absolutely find a way to shift what that is. You will be so much happier when you get down to just your problems and not the ones that other people have created within you. That is the happiest you will ever live your life. I don't care if you get down to, oh wow, and this one is mine. Great! Own it. Put your hand on it. You can't change it until you do. You can't shift it until you take absolute ownership of it. Until you are prepared to say, I am being negative, you can't change that into being positive. I'm fine. No, you're not. Be honest with it and allow yourself to begin to weed those things out. That can be done through prayer, through ritual, through spell work, through exercise. Affirmations are a wonderful one. Affirmations are a very big deal. I was never in shape in my entire life. Never. I was anorexically skinny in high school. I was overweight in my 30s. I was never in good shape. And I took up doing an affirmation at one point about exercising and about the way I wanted my body to look. I will reference Jan again. She knows. I don't miss the gym, do I? I don't care if the world's on fire. I don't care what's going on. I'm going to go to the gym. I practice my yoga. I broke this arm 4 months ago. I never quit going to the gym, and I never quit practicing yoga. When I say I broke my arm, 2 steel plates, 20 screws, bone sticking out, was not allowed to lift more than 3 pounds. You should have seen me at the gym lifting with one arm. I teach 8-limb yoga, so I couldn't do physical practice. I did breath, I did focus, I did concentration, I did meditation, I did all of the chanting, I did all of the stuff. I had a full yoga practice. Mary's been here quite a while doing yoga with us. Did you ever see me quit doing yoga? Not once. Maybe I wasn't doing yoga like everybody else was. I was doing yoga within my capacity because I wasn't going to let it go. Because that's who I choose to be. That's my frequency. That matched the affirmation that I made. One of my favorite ones was years ago, many years ago. I love sharing this just because the first part of this you'll be like, what? I used to be a valet for John Q. Hammonds. That part's not so weird. I then became a security guard for John Q. Hammonds. Don't I look like a good security guard to you? I'd hire me. How did I get that job? While I was sitting at my valet desk, I would go and open the door for rich people that lived in the condo. I'd park their car for them, things like that. I sat down and wrote an affirmation, I bet 2,000 to 3,000 times. that stated that I worked from 4 to midnight, made $1 an hour more than I presently had, worked with 10 or fewer people, had no direct supervision. That's a lot of specificity, right? After writing this, writing it over and over and over and over and over and over, in the present tense, not I want, I now have as my reality, boom, 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 boom. My boss called me one day and said, there's a security guard position that's come open. Do you want it? And I said, what are the details? He said, well, it pays $1 more an hour than what you're making now. You'll be working in a different building. Your job is basically to supervise the cleaning crew. There's like 8 of them. It's always less than 10. And since you're going to be there on your own, we're going to give you a radio, but your boss is going to be in the building across the street, so you're really going to be unsupervised. And it's from 3 to 11. I missed by 1 hour every single thing that I had written down. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times until it became part of my subconscious programming, until it was what I was full of, instead of thinking, I don't like this job, I want a different job, I wish this wasn't the job I had. Most of us look for change based on negativity. I made the change based on positivity. I made it about what I wanted instead of what I wanted to get away from. If your frequency is about what you want to get away from, that's going to be the dominant part that comes out of it, and you might end up in a worse place. You might end up in something less desirable. I didn't care where the job came from. I didn't care if it was with the same company. I didn't care in the least. I had spelled out the things that I wanted. Several years ago, 14 years ago, Scott and I rented. And I looked at him and I said, I want you to write down everything you want in the house. We're going to buy a house. He laughed. He said, you realize we have no money? I said, yeah. And he goes, so you're going to go into a bank and try to get them to give you a loan? You're a psychic. They're not going to loan you any money. And I said, shut up and write what you want on a piece of paper in a new house. He wrote down what he wanted, I wrote down what I wanted. This happened to be around Thanksgiving. I had a group that met at my rental house once a week. It was the week of Thanksgiving. There were about 20, so a few more people than are here. And I said, I got a favor to ask of everybody. I want you all to stand up one at a time and say how thankful you are that our next meeting is going to be in my new house. They did. I got everybody on the same frequency. A lot of energy running through that. We were all paying attention to each other. We were all focused on it. We had this affirmation going, because we discussed all that. They're like, how do you want to say it? As though it's a fact. A lady that was in that group went home that night and told the story to her husband, who happened to be a flooring guy. The flooring guy happened to know a contractor and called him and told him the story. The next day, I got a call from a guy named Dan. I didn't know Dan. Dan said, hi, my name's Dan. I own a house. I'm a contractor. I took this house in as a down payment on a house that I'm building for somebody else. Would you like to buy my house? I said, sure, let's go and look at it. Side note to that story, when I pulled up, there was a black cat in the driveway. I was like, oh, I'll take it. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, that's my panther totem. What do you mean? I'll take it. He said, would you like to see it? Yeah, but black cat, dude. 14 years later, Sebastian still lives with us. We go and we look at the house. Great. We get back in Dan's truck. And I said, great, love it. He said, how do you plan on getting financing? And I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. He goes, what? And I said, oh, dude, I don't have any financing. I was like, I'm a psychic. I do readings for a living. I'm self-employed. There's not a bank in the world that's going to loan me money to buy a house. That's just not a thing. I said, I can make the payments. I pay my rent every single month. I'm good for it. I don't have anything in delinquency, but no way. He looks at me and he goes, that is the most honest reply that I have ever heard from anybody. You didn't try to bluff me or hide anything. I'll own or finance it. He wrote up a contract for deed, and just because you got to hear the whole thing, he ran the paperwork through, got us $8,000 back from the government for first-time homeowners, and then we were supposed to satisfy the note in 3 years. We let it go for 7, and he called us up and he's like, I'm retiring. You guys have to get this over in your name now. We met with him at the bank, because by that point I owned a thing, and I could say I was a yoga teacher instead of a psychic, and all of that sort. I actually had a reported income, all that. He gave us the 7 years worth of equity that we'd paid in on the house. That's not how people do that. That money was his. He gave us every penny. The day that house went into our name, we had so much equity built up, it was ridiculous. All of that started with everything that I'm sharing with you today. The entire group set a frequency. We ran an energy through by saying all of it. She ran an energy through by taking it home and sharing it with the husband. The husband called him. That energy passed along and grew, and then I got a phone call that turned into where we live. People say to me all the time, why do you live in Republic? It's where the house manifested. I never once said where I wanted the house to be. But I guarantee you, every single thing that was on that list that my husband wrote is in that house. Every bit of it. It's nothing fancy, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not some palatial estate, but it's a house, and it had everything that we'd asked for in it. And that's because we set what mattered to us. We set the frequency we wanted. We ran the energy through it. We created a vibration. That vibration was sent out into the universe. The universe responded with, here's an opportunity for what you want. And we lived in that house. We have now outgrown that house, and it's about time for me to do that whole mess again. Does anybody know a flooring guy? Yeah. Do you? Have him call his contractor friend. Affirmations. Written is wonderful, but I think verbally is just as good. I've kind of taken to, I never quit talking. That's not just when you guys are present. I talk to myself all the time. I talk to my bird. I talk to my dogs. I just talk a lot. And so my morning routine is to speak all of my affirmations while I'm taking a shower. I just speak into being what it is that I want while I'm there. And for me, it's a wonderful technique because I'm shifting myself. I'm transforming myself. My image of getting out of bed, hair over here, get in the shower, oh wow, here's me awake, here's me doing my hair, here's me doing all of this sort of stuff, deciding how I want to look for the day, deciding what my expression is. I'm saying all of my expression expectations out into the world. All of those affirmations going out, and it's a wonderful technique that is so easy to use, and it's something you can build in. And what I like about it is it makes transformation a part of your regular daily routine. You're actually taking a normal activity and turning it into an energetic, magical practice that is there for you, and it's really just that simple. Gratitude work is a powerful one. We all know that gratitude is an amazing thing. If you can truly be thankful for something, then in some way you already own it. If you can truly be thankful for it. You know, I guarantee you that the more you say you are thankful for the love and support you have in your life, the more love and support you'll have. If you talk about gratitude for every little bit of abundance that comes into your life, you will simply have more abundance. That's just a fact. It's the way it works. Like attracts like. I guarantee you, it'd be a fun experiment. I guarantee you if we just started having a get to know each other conversation, I bet we'd be surprised how many similarities there are in this room. Just like me making a joke about who knows the flooring guy and somebody going, me? Like attracts like. Similar things joined together. You ever been to the party and it's like, oh my God, they're wearing the same shirt I am? Or you show up at work and everybody's wearing orange that day and nobody said anything about it. Like attracts like. That's why when you get the gaggle of Karens that all have the same haircut, they're all sitting at the same booth, and all of them want to see the manager first. Oh, don't tell me you don't know who I'm talking about. Don't tell me you don't know the haircut, and don't tell me you can't spot them in an instant. We all know what we're looking for here. Of course, one of my favorite things is spell work. Spell work and prayer, wonderful thing. pissed off an entire group of people once at a workshop by starting out saying that spells and prayer are the same thing. I said there was no difference between a Christian saying a prayer and a witch casting a spell. When I explained that they were taking an expectation, aligning it with whatever they considered God to be, and expecting an outcome, pretty much the same thing as far as I can tell, just going through different steps, unless you happen to be Catholic, and then the steps are exactly the same. You walk in with the swinging smoke, and you get the little cup, and you say the words over it, and you wear robes. It's the same thing. Where do you think they got it? In my world, they're the same thing. We take an intention, turn it into an expectation by something that's called sympathetic magic. Sympathetic magic is where you take an item or an image of something that represents what we want, and we create an altar or workspace that we can have a physical representation of what we wish to manifest. I personally have kept an altar for over 40 years. I always have symbols of what it is I'm working on that space, and the belief that will manifest into my reality. Once the spell's in place, you have to build the energy to run through it and to give it power. One of the best ways to do this is candles. The reason I love candle work so much, you take the candle and you put your, I don't like the word intention, I prefer expectation. Shortcut version, I have to share this every time I say those words. There's a big difference between a woman who intends to have a baby and a woman who's expecting a child. When you're expecting a child, you know it's going to exist. It's just a matter of when it's in your world. And so we want to think about that candle holding that expectation, and then we literally see wax and cotton turning into light and heat. It is the symbol of transforming one thing into another. The act of burning a candle literally transforms things into an energy that shifts the state of the room. You light a candle in a dark room and suddenly it's lit. It's a little bit warmer right over by the candle, and it's a chunk of wax and cotton filament. And so that thing that shows that dramatic transformation that's there, very powerful, very amazing. I hold an altar at home, and I hold one here. An altar can be very simple. You can be very, very high ceremonial magic about it and get just the right thing under the full moon of this day and this sign of that blah, blah, blah. Or you can use whatever it is that you happen to have. I'll reference Jan again. She's been at the house where I'm like, we're going to make something happen. And I'll rush around, grab whatever the hell makes me think of things, throw it together, light a candle, and then we all sit back and watch the thing happen. I think the best one was Thor. We're all hanging out one night, and I don't have Black Widow or Hawkeye yet, but I have all the Avengers in action figures, dolls. I'm not afraid of that word. I don't carry a man purse, I just carry a purse. And so I'm real big on Thor. This is a hammer of Thor. I've always liked Thor. Thor's what I used to call my spirit guide when I was a kid, before I understood anything, all of that. And so I went back and I got my Thor action figure, and I brought it out. I was like, we haven't paid any attention to Thor lately. And I set it up on my mantle, and I got my rattle, and I shook at it. It's surrounded by all these crystals and stuff in my house and all of this. And I was like, and I call Thor into our life. Candace, who teaches yoga here, also works with Rescue One. She called me the next day and said, dude, you love German Shepherds. I know you've got Arlo and Stella, but you've got to take this one in. He is such a sweet boy. He really needs a home. We're going to skip all the paperwork and all the fees. You just have to take him in. By the way, his name is Thor. The next day after doing that, Thor came to live with us. I happen to use that mantle as a secondary altar space. I use the same rattle that I use in my ceremonial rituals. I had gone through all the steps that I did when I'm truly trying to manifest something, which, let that be a lesson to everybody. Don't play with this stuff. Mean what it is that you're calling into your life, because you may just get it. It will manifest in one form or another. Thor's an awesome dog. I'm glad that he's with us. I wish he didn't have a thing about peeing in the floor.
I
didn't mention that part. Go ahead. Yeah.
have a question, or like
wanted your input on something when we're talking about setting intentions or expectations. I have this thing where I get caught up. I believe it will happen, but for some reason I have this block, this mental block that I only have so many tries or so many chances, and I want to make sure I'm spending it on the right thing, so I take no action, and then I just end up manifesting by default, which usually works out in my favor. But I have this fear, this mental block about, I guess I need to remember that I'm limited
Yes.
or uses of the manifestation, or
The reality is, I love that you bring that up, because I think that all of us can kind of relate to that, can't we? Don't we all get into that idea of, oh, I only get 3 wishes, I better not waste the first 2. I mean, that's just another way of saying what you're saying. I think a lot of us fall into that one. And so we have to go in and ask ourselves, whose shit is this? And we ask, who placed that limiting thought that there's not enough in there? Was that somebody from your childhood? Was that a teacher that would only give out so many A's, so there's no way that everybody could score on it? Is it that we tried out for a team and they only took so many players and we got left out? What is it that created a sense of limitation consciousness? Okay, so you don't have to, but if you're not embarrassed, share with us. What triggered in your head just then?
So my mom and my stepdad got together when my mom was pregnant with me, and are very much in love, have a great relationship, like just perfect match, soulmates. And I've worked through all this in therapy and all this,
Sure.
but for the majority of me growing up, I was a third wheel, a burden. They were a young jet-setting couple in the 80s,
There wasn't enough time,
Yes.
focus, attention.
doing so many fun things. If we didn't have this kid over here weighing us down, or
And so that's not only a sense of limitation consciousness, that's an unworthy
they
consciousness.
gave their love to each other, and there wasn't enough for me. And there are
And so you would grab whatever you could, but you knew that's all you were going to get. Do we all see where that would lead to a limitation? Thank you very much for sharing that. That's a lot to bring out in a public thing like that. But we can all see by that example how that would happen. One of my biggest problems was growing up gay in the Ozarks. I assume people don't like me. I assume that people will not like me. I assume that I won't fit in. I have most people don't believe this when I say this, I have huge social anxiety. And they're all like, but you come across like this. Yeah, you're in my place, in my topic, doing my thing. Of course I come across like that here. Out there, not nearly so much. And the other part you have to get is that I am very domineering, because it allows me to feel like I have control over the situation. And that way, at least I'm running the show, and if they don't like me, I don't give them room to say anything. And so we all develop these coping skills that served us very well at one point, but that becomes our trauma identity, and that trauma identity begins to block everything that it is that we're doing. Awesome example. Thank you very much. The idea of doing a borrowing of emotion to overcome something like that. And so I would say to you, you said in that we did things, there were times, sometimes the good landed on you. And so the next time you start feeling like there's a limitation, I want you to go back and remember, well, no, that happened and I felt loved. And that did, and that did, and that did. And you start coming up with enough of them that you can't view it as a limited finite number. You start adding enough of them that bubble bursts in your head to where you're like, oh, no, okay, there are plenty of times that it worked. Why am I thinking there's only so many shots that are there? And I think the other thing that goes into that is societally, we are told we're not good enough. And we have an outcome-based society. We do not value effort, we value outcomes. And every single person in this room has a collection of failures. Every single person in this room has things that they did not have the outcome that was desired. If we valued the effort, the way that we would view those things would be entirely different, because we were all trying in those moments. It just maybe didn't work out. I think that's like isn't that a Star Trek Picard quote? It's like, you can do absolutely everything right and still not win. But it's the not win that we get stuck on. This idea of a limitation is because we have been trained by society. Only some people get that special job. Only some people get to live in that neighborhood. Only some people get to be a part of that club. Only some people have the membership card for the thing. And so we live in this world of exclusiveness. And exclusiveness means exclusion. And we are actually brainwashed because people value us for who we exclude more than for who we include. And so we are conditioned and trained to think in this exclusionary way, and that makes us think there's not enough for everybody. And so in that one, part of it's society, part of it was mom and dad, part of it is the thing that you've built up into it, and part of it is, to wear out our entire thing today, that set a frequency in your mind and going over and over again ran energy through it, and that created the vibration that you're living under. You didn't know this was just about you today, did you? And thank you for coming. Yeah.
And we're always manifesting, so we should.
Always. Yes. Oh, I love what you're saying. Brilliant.
We're doing it anyway.
Do you catch what she's saying? We're always manifesting, so the idea that there's limited manifestation doesn't even make any sense. That's brilliant. Well, I'm sure I said it was brilliant. We already covered that. The brilliant part clearly meant that I told you that at some point. So I want everybody to, we got to be real brief because I got a lot more to get through and I get long-winded in case you haven't noticed. I want everybody to take a moment and decide something you want. Decide something you're trying to manifest. Something that you want in this life, in this experience right now. It's going to be different for all of us. Now I want you to think of the emotion that you're going to borrow to tie to that. Now, I would love to say that I won't call on people, but I clearly will. You just saw it happen. Does anybody have one that they'd be willing to share? What's something we want, and what's the emotion that we're borrowing? Just so that we can see somebody else's examples in mind. Go ahead.
I have two daughters here to my right. We've been through a lot of fucking shit. And I want these two to heal and find peace and happiness in their life. And that will make me heal.
And so what is the time that we saw healing occur that we could borrow that feeling? What's something that you can actually say that you did heal, that you have overcome? And what was the feeling that came in overcoming that?
Was when my mother's attorney called me Thursday night and told me that I'm going to get to live in my mother's house for the rest of my life.
Okay, now, did you all catch how many good parts there are in that? Because the reference was about family, first of all, and so family home, that's an instant tie-in of good mojo to throw on the whole thing. It came through in a legal fashion, which means it's undeniable, doesn't care what anybody thinks. This is, by God, how it's going to be.
I've never been so serious in my life.
I think the idea there of wanting someone else to have that sense of joy, meaning that selflessness, meaning that willing to give and that deep desire for somebody else, and then having that thing come in that means something to you for the rest of your life. That means we're not just trying to manifest temporary happiness. We don't want you to just feel good today. We're throwing for the rest of your life into this whole mix. That's an awesome example of borrowing an emotion that you're wanting to go into something. And I think that if we can get to where we practice it, it gets so much easier, so much easier, so much easier. And it goes back to that idea, and I get it, a lot of us have had very hard lives. I think that many of us have had very, very hard lives. When I talk about getting over the poverty thing, my biggest question as a kid was, why did they not give you a lid to put on the can of peanut butter after you cut the top off of it when the government sent it to you? Why didn't they give you a thing that closed up the block of cheese that you got once a month? Because that's how we ate when I was a kid. I didn't know to be thankful that we lived in a trailer. It was, oh, I lived in a trailer. But now, trust me, since then, I've lived places that I wish I owned a trailer. And so, but getting to the point where I could think about not having the lid for the peanut butter, or, man, that peanut butter was actually pretty good. Finding that one little emotional thing to grab hold of and to build on it that was there, incredible thing. I have to share one that's with this because we're talking about family and stuff, and my mom is brilliant. She was brilliant before she understood any of the words that go with this stuff. When my mother couldn't pay the bills, now keep in mind this is a point where she was a single mom, and she would go to work. She'd get up to go to work an hour after we left for school, and she got home an hour after we went to bed at night because she had to work 12 hours a day just to pay the bills so we had a place to be, right? And when she couldn't pay the bills, and God knows nobody in the family would help, she would take us to Kmart. It was back in the day. And she would buy us a new pair, me and my brother and I, a pair of Keds sneakers. I think they were $5 a pair. So she would take $10 out of the money she didn't have, and she'd buy us a pair of shoes. And we would go home, and we would walk around showing off our shoes, and we'd have a little fashion show about our shoes, and we would talk about how great our shoes were, and we put so much positive energy into this. Somehow the bills got paid, and it makes no sense whatsoever because no more money came in. But somehow it all worked out in the end. And it was all because she managed to shift our energy from focusing on not having to having not just enough, but we got something extra. And she did it in a way that all three of us, what mother doesn't love seeing their kids have fun, dancing around, showing off their shoes? So she felt good. We were getting all the attention in new shoes. We felt good. It created this amazing vortex of energy, this vibration that went out there, and everything came back to where it actually got done. So we want to think about what we want those things to look like. I'm going to run through this one because I don't want to take a lot of time on it because it's an entire workshop on its own. But when I talk about spell work, I'm just going to give you a quick example, maybe two. I love my Jeep. My Jeep's the one outside that you think is black. It's actually green, but that's another story. Because nothing appears the way it is with me. If I wanted a new Jeep, I shouldn't say if, I would go and find a model, a picture, or a Hot Wheels car that looked exactly like the Jeep I wanted, and it would sit on my altar. And in my mind, it would be just as real as me driving one off the lot. And if I did that, I guarantee you, in a very short period of time, I'd be driving one off of a lot. It's one of the easiest ways to get things going. Put it as the screensaver on your phone, so every time you open it up, you see that thing. Isn't it a part of your world already then? Speak as though it already exists. Talk to people as though you've already attained what's there. Let it become the thing that you're wanting. My mom, again, when we were a little bit older, still pretty poor, it was about Thanksgiving time, Christmas coming up. I don't know how she comes up with this stuff. She went to the library, this is way before the internet. She went to the library and found the dimensions and everything for the Great Pyramid of Giza. And she got construction paper and cut out a pyramid. And she found this long worded affirmation about having prosperity and abundance. And she took a check and wrote herself a check for $1,000, which back then we thought was all the money in the entire universe. And she signed it, God the Universal Banker. That was her aligning the frequency. The energy she put into it is every day she got it out, read the affirmation, looked at the check, said thank you for receiving that, put it back in the pyramid, and anytime anybody said anything about it, she would say, "Not my problem. I turned it over to God." And that was the end of the conversation. That year at Christmas, Mom had, at that time, 8 siblings, 7 now. My granddad, who we thought never had any money in his entire life, had always given all of his kids $20 for Christmas. Everybody that year got a check for $1,000. The exact amount, the embodiment of what it was. She had created an altar to what it is that she was wanting. She ran the energy through it. That altar set the frequency. Reading it every day put the energy behind it. That created a vibration that went out. That vibration manifested through the universe, came through the grandfather, and all of that. He passed away a couple of months ago. At that point, we found out that the grandparents that we thought never had any money were worth about $1 million. Never think you know. Never live in limitation. Never believe that things are just the way you perceive them to be. Everything is changeable. Everything. Once we've set our frequency through these practices, we run the energy through them, create our vibration, we must first understand that we are constantly sending a vibration, what Jan was saying, one form or another out into the universe. Once we realize this, we become better aware of what we're sending out without thinking or redirecting ourselves to become broadcaster of what we actually want and desire. The Bible says to have a prayerful mind, and what that actually means is to realize that every single thing you're thinking and saying is a prayer that is helping to create your reality. All of us should be more careful about the things that we think and that we say. Vibrational integrity is when what we think, what we say, what we do, and what we believe are all in alignment. This requires diligence and practice, and we have to retrain ourselves so that all of our parts match. We want to get to where all of those things are in alignment with ourselves. And for most of us, it's the beliefs or the emotions that'll jack you up. But I've used the same examples for years. If somebody sets the intention as thinking right and talking right, I'm going to get a new job, and I'm like, well, where have you applied? Nowhere. Well, then you haven't done the physical follow-through. Or my absolute favorite, I want love in my life, and I've decided that I deserve it, and I put that out into the universe, and I'm talking that way, and I'm doing all of that, and I'm like, and where are you going to meet these people? Oh, nowhere, I don't really go anywhere. Okay, so you're thinking pizza guy or the mailman is going to be the love of your life. Because if you're not actually following through with physical action, then how is it ever going to manifest? I'm assuming that you knew there was an attorney involved somewhere along the line, and you'd had communication with that attorney. This wasn't something that just, like a meteorite landed in your life. There was some energy and follow through and words and thoughts and emotions and all the parts that went into this, and suddenly it comes through and it manifests in that way. If we think about vibration as our unique expression out into the world, then we can easily see where things go wrong. Do you talk down about yourself? Do you see yourself in the way that you want to be? Rich people think, act, believe, and talk in the way of abundance, and poor people do the opposite. Healthy people have a healthy thought about the way they are. They have ways of seeing themselves, and they do things that help to lift them up, and people that don't have physical ailments. Of course, there's reality. This is the one that gets everybody. When we can't pay our phone bill, how are we supposed to be talking about prosperity? You start small. You go out and you tip an extra $1 than you thought you were going to. You allow yourself to spend an extra $5 on something, and you realize you had that money to do that. And you think about it simply multiplying, because you're able to do it there, you'll be able to do it in bigger ways. And like attracts like. Giving that money out freely means you can begin to receive it freely, and it snowballs and it grows and it becomes this entire thing. And so we want to get to the idea that what we're putting out there doesn't have to be tit for tat. If I want a house, I want a nicer place to live, and it's nasty cold weather outside, and I take an old styrofoam cooler and put a towel in it and turn it upside down for Sebastian to have a warm place to live, I've given him a better house. I've created the energy of a better place to live. I can now believe that I'm going to find a better house and be able to get into it. It's an old cooler that was sitting in the corner of the garage anyway. We always overcomplicate it. Sympathetic doesn't mean the exact same thing. I talk about Hot Wheels car on my altar to manifest a new Jeep. We find something that is similar to what it is. We decide that we're going to make a one-time donation to somebody. We're going to hand a $10 bill to that homeless person on the side of the road. We do something that shows the abundance we have. We want more love in our life? Be more loving. If you want love, you got to give your love away. There's a whole song about it. We'll play for you sometime. We want to think about the idea that the way we see ourselves is distorted. And I want to tell you one of my favorite practices that you could ever possibly get to. An accomplishment journal. I wish every single one of you would go today and buy a blank notebook and every day committing to writing down 3 things that you accomplished in that notebook. I don't care if the first one is, I wrote in the notebook because Shane said to. I don't care if that's the first one for the next week. I made my bed. I cleaned the house. I called my mother. I said hello to a stranger. I held the door open for somebody. I don't care. I got a new job. I got rid of somebody else's shit that was in my head. I want you to think about what can you write down in that accomplishment journal. Commit to 3 things. Don't limit yourself to 3 because I guarantee you did more than 3 things today. I went to a workshop about changing my life. Okay, that counts. You put those things down, and after a week or 2, it gets easier because you realize that validating yourself is not a bad thing, that you're not bragging because other things you actually did. And then in the moment where you feel like you're not deserving, you're worthless, you haven't done enough, you go back and look at that damn thing, you're like, oh, well, I actually did do something. Oh, I actually am a good person. Oh, I actually did try. And you allow yourself to begin to validate all of the accomplishments and everything that goes right. And if you have 2 journals where you're writing down everything you did good and everything you're thankful for, you will change your entire energy that you send out into the world. There's no way that you wouldn't. If you step into, I have accomplished, I have done things, and I am thankful for things, you're already sending out a better energy than most of the people walking around in the world right now. You're sending out a much better vibration than 95% of the people anywhere at all. Bringing it all together. I am so proud about this part. I wrote out steps.
Thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank whoever possessed me, channeled through, and got this onto the paper. Make a clear and precise expectation for your life. What is it you want? Make it clear, make it definite, figure out the affirmation for it, word it as though you already have it, word it in a way that you can be thankful for what you've said, make sure that it's something reasonable and obtainable and not something that you do not believe will happen. Make sure that it's something you can grasp and believe in. Step 2, remove all the inner obstacles to that becoming your reality. Whose shit is it? Dig deep and find where you don't think it can happen and why you don't think, and go to work changing that. Affirmations, repetitive statements, psychotherapy, shock therapy, whatever it is it takes, get your brain off that stuff and onto something better. I don't know, do yoga. Or go see a shaman. Align your frequency to match your expectations. Borrow an emotion and create an affirmation, an altar, whatever, to align with what it is you want. Step 4, build energy to run through that frequency using the tools that we discussed earlier. Align what you think, say, do, and believe with this frequency. Be aware and constantly mindful of the vibration you're sending out and adjust as often as you need to. And then truly expect what you want to become your actual experience in life. Doesn't that sound ridiculously simple? It is. And you're doing it already. Maybe in the wrong way, maybe the wrong thing we're manifesting, but you're doing everything that's on those steps already. We just want to do it in a much, much better way. So let's all put your stuff away for a second. Set everything down. Get to where we're free, energetic beings. So you remember that gong we used at the beginning? We're going to use it again now that we understand stuff. That's going to be our battery. That's going to be our energy. I'm going to be up here hitting the round thing with a stick, and that's going to be the energy that we're radiating out here. What I need all of you to do, and I asked you to do this earlier, I hope that you've already got it loaded up because we set that into your mind earlier. Set an expectation. Most people would say an intention. Set an expectation. What is something that you want to manifest? For the sake of today, don't start with the biggest damn thing in your life. Think about something simple. Think about something that you want to be a part of your experience. Now close your eyes, and I want you to borrow an emotion that begins to go with that fits that. What is some thought, some memory that would allow you to feel the way you're wanting to feel? Now I want you to think about tying those things together. You've got a very clear idea of what you want. You've got a moment that you're borrowing an emotion from that allows you to feel the way that you would want to feel. Then we're going to build up some energy for just a moment. Eyes still closed, energy built up. I want you to think of what your thoughts, words, actions, and beliefs need to be to align with this. What inner or outer dialogue do you need to change? What words do you need to shift right now? What beliefs do you need to change? What are the proper ones that lead to what it is that you're wanting? What physical actions do you actually need to take to manifest it? What beliefs, what thoughts, what words, what actions? Let yourself feel the vibration radiating out from you into the universe. And then step into a space where you're absolutely thankful for receiving what it is that you wanted. In your own mind, I am thankful for, fill in your own blank there. And then simply open your eyes. Now, a lot of people would say to me at this point, do I need to keep doing this? Or do I do this and let this go? If you can get to a space where you're very clear on thoughts, words, actions, beliefs, and you've done all the steps and you feel like you're locked in, dialed in, everything groovy, then crockpot that. Set it and forget it. If your mind starts shifting back into other spaces, you course correct just as much as you need to. If that exercise didn't, then you go and get you a candle, and every time you light it, you go through those steps again. You find the mantra you're going to chant, the song you're going to sing, the dance you're going to do, the little model for what it is that you're wanting. Draw a picture, do something. Tend to it as much as you need to keep this thing where it needs to be, because it loves to shift around, and it usually defaults to the screw you factor, and that's not what we want. So realign yourself just as often as you need to. Go through the steps as often as you need to. Here's a really cool side effect that happens. What you want will begin to change. Because you step into the idea that I'm in control and I can manifest what I want, and you will realize very quickly that you started with petty stuff that isn't what you truly, truly want. I guarantee you that the day that you get down to, I want to be happy and satisfied, and that's what you try to manifest, all the other shit will just fix itself. We can go around trying to fix every little thing, trying to clip every little raveling thread, and trying to clean up every little smeared spot, and trying to fix every little thing that's there. Or we could work on just being happy. Because if we're actually happy and satisfied, didn't all of that other stuff already fix? So we correct ourselves and we realign just as much as we need to. And we begin by understanding our basic breakdown. Frequency is the intention that you hold. Energy is the fuel that runs through it, and those things combined create the vibration that you're sending out into the universe. The vibration and your experience become one and the same. I know it works. I gave you several examples. Let me give you my favorite one of the day. I wanted an awesome group of people here to talk to this about it. One, got it. It's been a great group. You've all shared. You've all thought about it. I've seen the look on people's faces of, oh wow, I did think of an emotion that I could borrow. That's kind of cool. I see people when I'm hitting this gong shifting. I see the energy and the vibration changing of everything. And if we break it down to that simple, and we realize we're doing it anyway, and we decide to do it thoughtfully and purposefully, then we can actually begin to change the entire course and direction of our life. Side note, it involves Mom. We were sitting in the studio one day, and she's the one who took me to Hilltop, so she knows where all that comes from. And she said, I am just amazed at what you've done here. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, you've always just been pretty lazy. I never really thought you'd teach an exercise class or anything like that. And she goes, and then you created this entire place. I was like, we were on compliments. Can we go back to that? And she goes, no, seriously, I can't believe you've created a place like this. And I was like, you're the one that taught me everything I know. What do you mean? And she goes, I've just never allowed myself to think that big. I never thought that I was capable of something like that. And I said, well, I don't understand what the big difference is. She doesn't miss a beat. She looks at me and she goes, oh, well, you never ever in your life questioned if you were loved or good enough. I made sure you knew you were. Meaning she never got that. My mother is far more spiritually connected than I'll ever be. She's smarter. She's a hell of a lot nicer. Friendlier. But she is amazed at what I did. But we both know that the reason I was able to do it is because she instilled enough belief in me that when I was trying to get rid of all that garbage, because as good as my mother is, my dad's on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so I had a lot of self-loathing, I had a lot of not good enough, I had a lot of I'm not worthy. I had somebody once ask me how I got over my insecurities about being gay. Simple answer. I decided it was everybody else's problem and not mine. So whatever it is that you think that isn't good enough about you, decide today that's everybody else's problem, not yours. If there's something about yourself that you truly feel isn't good enough, then go to work and change it. Pour the energy into the remedy instead of focusing on the problem. Practice the steps that we've laid out here today, and I promise you, you will step into the driver's seat of your own life. You'll have a happier existence, and the things that you want to manifest will begin to appear in your life left and right and all over the place. Do you guys have any questions for me? Do you get the basic idea? It's surprisingly simple. I have a big distinction in my mind between simple and easy. It's simple, that doesn't mean it's easy. You got to stay after it until it gets done. But I believe in you. That doesn't matter. The day you believe in you, it's all just going to open up in front of you. I appreciate every single one of you coming. If something we've talked about here is something you've got a simple question about, send it over to me. If you want to get in and work on some of this stuff a little bit deeper, go to the website or get hold of Jan. The number's on there. She'll put you on my schedule and get you in here. Otherwise, know that I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all.